Last game of the original quad, Chickamauga. Chickamauga is kind of an interesting battle for me. First of all, it's one of those battles that I don't feel like there's a whole lot of coverage. I do have a few games on it, but I think this is the first time I've ever gamed Chickamauga, unless I did minis, which is quite possible. I did some minis games where I had no idea what was going on, either at a con or we never really, the group I was with did all the Civil War battles, but I wasn't around for that. I was around for quite a few of the Napoleonic battles. They were doing all the major Napoleonic battles, which is quite an undertaking. Anyway, Chickamauga is not an easy game to represent, and this doesn't look like it takes a very serious look at the chaos of the battlefield. And for that reason, I've chosen to play with the option and put all the little numbers on. The thinking being, there are often forces that were in really good position to attack that did nothing. In particular, Chatham was never really used. He just kind of sat in the middle of the battlefield and didn't advance. You have terrible command problems on both sides, really. Braxton Bragg in command for the Confederates. Not that terrible a leader, probably, overall. Leonidas Polk as one of his wing commanders, probably a problem. Disagreements between the overall command and A.P. Hill, who came in eventually as reinforcements. And Hill was a problem with a number of commanders, right? But he was placed under Polk and then, didn't get his orders to attack. Long delays in the early morning on the second day. All kinds of problems just happened. Rosecrans mistaking positioning, all kind of crap that just didn't make sense anyway. And I brushed up a little on the history. One interesting thing about this map, it looks like someone cut it as though maybe it linked with another map at some point. I don't know. I don't have that unless it's from another series or something, or another, maybe the second set of the series or whatever. I have no idea. I was not aware of there being a second battle though, so I don't know why that would be cut like that. Maybe somebody can tell me. Special rules for this one? Well, again, I'd expect a lot to be going on, especially in the command and control side of things at Chickamauga. I see nothing. What there is specific rules on reinforcements that I don't think were in the other ones, where units can't come in stacked. They have to trickle in as though they're in columns. Probably would make sense as a general rule for the game, actually. And it would make it a little bit, you couldn't just fly across with all your forces. I don't know that it even makes a damn bit of difference. The way it's worded, I don't think it does. No, you do have to see them as so you spend movement points for the additionals. And again, I don't think that was in the other ones. Now I'm bound to look. You have a map exit roll here. People can leave off these two hexes. Either side can leave. You get victory points for leaving the map. Okay. Well, speaking of the victory points, what do we have? Each player gets 1 point for every casualty strength point, for every strength point of casualty they cause. The Union gets 1 victory point for every strength point it exits from the map. Okay. The Confederates get 10 for every unit that they exit from the map. However, they have to have a line of communications going back here. So if the Union leaves, the Confederates can just charge forward. Which means that if you have, say, ineffective Union units on the second day or whatever, pulling them off the map is a really good option because it gets you more victory points. You can go defend Chattanooga with those. If you can hold the Confederates from getting too good a victory out of this. The Confederates also get 10 victory points if they take the Union train. Special rules for the Union train. We'll get to that in a bit. In addition, okay, the Union player gets 10 points for hex 1920. I'm going to have to put some markers on these. That's over here. Not quite, well, it is a crossroad. It's not the one I would have thought. But, and 20 points for 2311. These are pretty unlikely goals. That's over here. They're going to have to defeat a larger Confederate force to do that. The Confederates get 20 points for 0211, which is probably this. No, it is not. It's this. What is that? McFarland's Gap. Okay. And they also get 20 points for 0502, which is this road here. But either player gets 5 points for 0822. It'll be down here. Okay. 1108. And I'll get some markers for this. That's here. At the end of the field, I guess dominating the road. And 1115. Which is right here, the center, really of what was to become the Union final positioning before they withdrew after the battle. In order for the Confederates to count any of their units that leave the map that way, they have to be able to trace a line of communication along roads off the eastern edge of the map. That's not easy. They really kind of have to shunt the Union away and make a drive this way. Historically, they didn't try to do that. And then they have to defend that and send strength points off. And what is it? It's 10 points per strength point? Yeah, so that's pretty big. I didn't know if it was 10 points per unit. There's some initial occupation. And Union units, which cannot trace a path of 10 hexes to a road, which then exits 0101 and 0110. 0101, 0110 is here. If you turn exits the map at either of those hexes, at the end of the game are going to be considered destroyed and it'll be worth victory points. So again, the Union has to maintain its communication. It doesn't have to worry about holding this though, so they could fall back all the way back here and they're fine, except they do that, they'll start losing some of these victory points that they'd won. Finally, the Union train, remember, it's worth 10 points. Its special rule, it can't attack. If it's forced to attack, it's like an ineffective unit. It cannot stack with anything. It can't. No unit can move through the train. It can't move through other units' hexes. It's a little different from movement for anything else. I am assuming it can't leave the board, but I'm not seeing any special rule on that. So let's take a look here. Well, I don't know where it comes in. See where it comes in, because that might be important. The train comes in at 0728 or 1027. 4728 or 1027. So it's got a long way to walk if it wants to get off the map. So that's not too bad. Yeah, and you would want to get it off the map because there's no reason. You're not trying to hold this ground as the Union. You're trying to prevent Chattanooga from falling back into Confederate hands. Okay, well, I have no idea how the chaos is going to be worked out. I have a little bit of question in my mind whether it's the right thing to do to play with the optional attack effectiveness rule. But let me explain the why. Because obviously, without it, hey, where's the chaos? Well, the chaos may be baked into the fact that there are units, that there are a lot of units, and it's often hard to get a lot of units attacking at once. But as long as the front is as broad as it normally would be, I don't see anything that would prevent an all-out attack if that was appropriate in the game. The game actually kind of dissuades you from making those kind of attacks and rewards more piecemeal attacks, but not in any way that like is meant to represent the effects of a piecemeal attack. So I don't really buy that it itself is going to represent the way the battle actually occurred in any reasonable sort of sense. There's no special rules to handle the command problems. There's a ton of troops, which is one way that you might end up with forces not attacking, but there's no way that like a gap would open up and not be exploited. An exploitable gap would open up and not get exploited by the rules. So the only thing that might cause that to happen is units becoming pushed back on an attack and thus becoming attack ineffective. Now, there's a lot of time for units to remain ineffective. And overall, I think this will actually somewhat benefit the Union because they have something to do with their attack and effective units. The Confederates, not so much. Although if they can control this roadway, or this one, or whatever, and start getting units off the board, those might be good, good units to send to garrison an area where you're not really expecting to attack. It's still dangerous, though. As to the first day, well, it'll make the fighting more sporadic and maybe too sporadic. It may cut back on the overall casualties you see. But on the other hand, those attack ineffective units, they become kind of targets because you can advance up against them and force them into retreat situations where they end up dying or just, getting yourself into some advantages in regards to them. So I'm not absolutely certain that they're going to reduce casualties by playing with them. So we'll give them another shot here. I wish I had read the Gettysburg stuff. I wish I'd ever played it before, because I will never again play it where I give the defensive bonus for the town. But I think I might play it with the attack and effectiveness. Though there are reasons not to, but because the length of the days is rather short, especially for that late in the summer, because the fighting was sporadic and didn't tend to be all across the field, large-scale fighting the way some of the other battles are. Anyway, not starting tonight, but soon. Sometime tomorrow. So I dropped some tiddlylinks on the board to show where the victory point hexes are. And you can kind of see, this one in particular is well, that's going to help make the battle happen the way it happened. It's a little weird. It's not really, I don't know. I don't really see it as a reasonable solution. The way the battle happened is kind of crazy, and it wasn't done for reasonable reasons. It wasn't done because, yes, this crossroads is that important. It was done because the units just didn't fall back and create a cohesive line. And it kind of generated some of the problems in the game, because you have this sort of natural defensive space here. You do here too, there's no question. But forces here aren't really in link with these, and it made life kind of difficult. Anyway, some of the others, you know, one side or the other has made a lot of territorial gains for whatever that matters in this little battlefield area. And it does indicate some key road locations. This one's a little weird. It feels like it should be on the road, but who cares, you know, or on the crossroads. It may again be a little tainted in order to create some situations on the battlefield that wouldn't happen otherwise. Because I know, I don't know. I don't remember enough. All right, so the Union's going to be first every turn, and we'll get started. Everything except 2 of my Union units, this cav and this infantry, or everything else, I kind of know what I want to do. Yeah, this might be nice to hold, but I'm close enough that I can form a continuous line, or contiguous line, or whatever you want to call it, of some sort. So that's good. There might be some value to being up front and, you know, contesting the Confederates in the woods where it's hard to move, because maneuver is such a big part of getting an attack in correctly. But these guys are tricky. First of all, the rough woods cost 6. I thought it cost 3. I may have cheated in some of the other games. The trails cost 2 each. We haven't dealt with those in another game. Yeah, this was everything except Antietam. I think I was paying him 3 at least some of the games. So this guy's the big question. Does he want to sit here? He's in a lot of danger if he's right there. So then my questions become moving here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the woods here, which might be kind of annoying to the Confederates, and then I might send an infantry up to support him, if that's the case. And I think that's what I'm going to go with, because my other is 1, 2, 3. Now I could just run back, or 4, 5, and be in the woods here, and kind of close to this nice defensive terrain, in which case I'd bring this other unit over here instead. However, there's no support, and I mean, the Confederates will go pick that unit off. There's almost no question of that. Victory conditions, I think, work out to be whoever has the mostest. Unlike some of the others, I don't see levels of victory. You just count up points, I think, and compare. Interesting. And you don't get special points for anything, just for destruction and withdrawal. So there's nothing I got to keep on paper like in the Cemetery Hill. I'm just really torn with what to do with this unit. He's very annoying. And I know in the player's notes, which are kind of extensive actually, you can attack the Confederates on turn 1. Yeah, I don't think so. I really don't think so. Yes, I might be able to lock units down and force them into ugly attacks. I might be able to get some lucky things, but I think the defensive terrain is more valuable. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to let them deploy. And the Confederates can drive on Withers or take everybody north of Reed's Bridge and drive hellbent for the Roseville Gap. Up here, I guess. Which would be pretty advantageous if we did that. And he feels the Confederates should go after Withers, which, you know, is a victory point space at least, and it can kind of get you in there. Neither of these is the actual historical situation, which was kind of a blunder forward to the position. Which appeals to me because, hey, there's the enemy, got to kill him. but that's not necessarily the goal here. So yeah, well, I think I'm going to pull back towards here. It's kind of odd for a game to give this kind of strategy information, suggestions in there. I'm tempted not to really pay attention to it, as you see. But I like the tactical appreciation. It gives you a few things that you have to keep in mind about the game. They're kind of weird, so, you know, keep alternating hex as well. This is an early enough game that maybe that concept isn't really sunk in on the average operational gamer. But then one of them is each player is given only 3 artillery units. Now, these are abstracted, and it's kind of a weird thing. There's more artillery in the battle than is represented by those units. And those units indicate, like, the few opportunities that either side had to kind of mass artillery and use it. A lot of it was dispersed, and so it's kind of factored into the combat strength of the units. And then, you know, broad things like you should look for situations where 4 and 5 strength point units can attack 3 and 4 strength point units at 1-to-1, hoping to force the Confederates to attack back at 1-to-2. Yeah, this is pretty standard stuff for the system. I don't know about using weaker units to advance after combat. Yeah, to hope for an exchange. Well, maybe. And that's again because of the strength point differences. So those are like some considerations as to, yeah, this is just kind of some weird little gamey stuff that works for the most part. The artillery is weird because what they're saying is the Union's got to stack their artillery or keep it with infantry or something to prevent Confederate artillery from bombarding it and, you know, killing it off. Or maybe it's the other way around. No, the Confederate artillery is a little stronger, where it gets a chance maybe to get a 2-to-1 against an artillery and boom, just take it out without any losses. Plus, you want to kind of conserve them because you don't have many, and keep them for where you can use them. The Union has none on the field to begin with. There's at least 1 Confederate artillery on the field that I saw. All right, let me start moving some of them rebel pieces I got. Taking a drive this way, but also trying to outflank on the other side. We're actually advancing across the front. Hey. Kind of historical, except we'll probably actually attack with our units instead of just sitting there. We got one little battle coming up. We managed to get a 3-to-1, part of the reason why we were driven this way. Hey, I'm an opportunist. I don't think strategically at all. And that gives us a shot at defender eliminated, which we don't get. We get a retreat. And we can advance a unit, though. Actually... yeah, let's advance this one. In order to force an attack by the Union. And that's the end of one turn, and I get to record a play for this, right? Yeah, I gotta tell you, you know, every system, once I get through about 4 games, that's why the quads are not a terrible idea. But once I start getting through a few games in a system, I'm fatigued. Now, you would think a light system like this would be less fatiguing, but honestly, this is actually more effort in some ways because of all the factor counting and everything, like a GBOH game. It's not up there with musket. It might be close to musket and pike in terms of the joy to the pain involved. There's a lot more pain. There's a lot less joy accomplished through a game like this, and at least for me, you know, it's just I've got a certain respect for them, and sometimes I'm kind of in the mood for them. I certainly was when I started the series. It's stayed its welcome, and it's about time for the system to leave, though. The Union have this big old stack coming in down here. Wasn't expecting that. I thought their force would be coming here from here. It's one of the reasons why playing a game for the first time is sometimes the best experience. I know, like, Doubleday's troops coming in at Gettysburg, the first time it happened, I was kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? That's kind of this kind of reaction. And so the Confederates have just, you know, maybe are getting blindsided by an attack. Otherwise, There's one hell of a defensive force there, and the idea of trying to punch through here seems a little questionable. I'm launching a big attack against here, and we'll worry about the gap I just created in a moment. That's going to be a problem, but, you know. Thinking, oh, well, I can attack this unit too. No, I can't because of the way the units enter the map. You know, I wanted to look that up on the other games, see if they had the same rule. But, yeah, I don't have enough movement now to slip around and hit here. I thought this was, you know, whatever I thought. But yeah, I gotta bring more forces in. This is the only game in the series that has sort of newer fangled reinforcement rules where units don't just move onto the hex and keep moving. So I didn't misplay that on any of the others, at least. I did misplay, pretty sure, the cost for moving into these things. Yeah, that might have been a big deal in some cases. I don't know how much of one, but because I probably wasn't on too many of those spaces through. Here's the Union deployment before attacking, and we got the 1-to-1. We're not gonna do anything fancy there, and we're see, now here's where things get tricky. So if the 5 advanced and I got and the Confederates forced an exchange, they would have to lose 6 strength points to kill the 5. That kind of thinking I really kind of hate, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I got one big attack here and a minor one here. The rest of the troops, well, we got the gap somewhat covered at least. And not perfectly, and it's weaker than I would like. But we'll see. I'm playing with the attacker and effective rules, so we had a bad result there. On a 2-to-1. Here was a 3-to-1. We could have gotten a kill. We didn't. Here I could advance. What's interesting is the terrain's so lousy that it's hard to get around and attack someone. But I think if this pulled in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, he could be surrounded to the extent where he couldn't retreat, and this unit can do it as well. So I can't really afford the advance there. However, I'm pretty safe from not being completely surrounded in the woods, which is kind of interesting. And Confederates pushing along here. Some good attacks, actually. And then another one over here trying to punch through this gap. And then over here, oops. This guy who went around to surround, I hope he's good enough. Well, he's got a 2-to-1, that's good enough. And I'm threatening to destroy this unit, which is great. So, well resolved. The Confederates got themselves in a position where they could have eliminated these guys, which would have been a big coup. But instead they failed on that 3-to-1, I think, attack. No, it was only a 2-to-1. And we're pushed back. And again, I kind of like the attacker and effective role here. I think it adds something interesting to this game. Especially with they're not going to do anything until night now. It may end up meaning the battle's not bloody enough though, but we'll see. Down here, we made our advance. Over here, killed the unit, pushed forward. We got 2 Union units dead. Because there's victory points for terrain in this one, unlike a couple of them. Shiloh essentially doesn't have terrain, and Gettysburg doesn't have it. Well, Cemetery Hill, let's call it, doesn't have terrain victory points. It means that, you know, it's hard to get any kind of multiplier, but multiples don't matter in this. There's no proportional victory conditions on this one, unlike all of the others, which I find also kind of odd. I don't know. Anyway, that's where we are now. And I said I don't think I'd played a game on Chickamauga. Actually, I have. I played Baron Victory, which I think is Chickamauga. I don't know. It's weird because it's on the end of that set, and then over here, and I have my fantasy and crap. Chickamauga is where things start up with this terrible sound. as well, which I have not yet gotten to. So that's kind of interesting. Anyway, such is. Hard to see these white counters, the red here and the blue there. But the Union had gotten themselves in kind of a tricky position, or the Confederates got the Union in a tricky position. Now, of course, the Confederates are a little squeezed as well. But where this unit might end up dying if there's an advance into there. But yeah, I had to fling everything up to kind of fight this, and that means this is exposed. I've got these attack and effective units on the front line. You kind of like to pull them out because bad stuff can happen to them pretty easily. And then over here, I feel heavily outnumbered, so I feel like I'm in a lot of trouble with the Union at this point. Maybe I should have attacked to begin with. I managed to get an exchange on this attack, which then led to the destruction of the unit was there. So now we're starting to see some Confederate casualties. Otherwise, though, things looked kind of as they were. Confederates continue to up the ante over here in the south, whereas over here, getting into position. This woods is a pain in the ass to try to get attacks in this game. It's such a geometrical game anyhow that, you know, you can't just grind forward and count on your firepower to blow the other guy out. This is far more of a, you know, like I said in one of the other ones, a chess-like game. You're looking at the geometry of the situation, trying to figure out how you can get that grasp. There's, you know, the odds charts and everything that you have to worry about too, but it's just not trivial to play. You don't just slam your forces against each other like you do in the games that I think are actually, you know, more detailed simulations, but also more to my taste. But yeah, a couple of one-to-one attacks were sufficient to take out Wilder's unit, which is so well rated because it's armed with the Sharps carbines. And that puts us back on the Union turn to try to preserve their situation. It feels like it's, you know, playing out as a nice game, actually. I know I'm kind of tired of the system, but it's still fun. Not engaging too hard. We've got a lot of the victory point hexes in our hands. I'm counting on number of hexes being worthwhile. I mean, these guys in the center are worth 5 points each. These are the big ones over here. The Confederates have, I think, none of the victory point hexes that are contested at the beginning of the game. Well, that are potentially contested. They don't have any of these three. So I feel pretty comfortable just kind of trying to get a good defensive position and fighting where I have to, like here, where we'll do this battle. 9, 12, 3-1. I'm a little worried over here, but you got reinforcements coming in. I hope they're coming in from over there. 3-1 to defend a retreat. Do I want to force him to fight me? See, if I extend too much further, that could be a loss of a unit. And I don't see making these things retreat as being terribly valuable at this point. They're holding a line, but I'm not going aggressive. So I think I'm going to stand where I am and move on to the Confederate turn. And let's just look up where this turn 5 reinforcements for both sides come in, honestly. Oh, 728, 1027. No, that's more down here. Oh, crap. And for the Confederates, well, we know theirs aren't coming in anywhere interesting. 1627, 1928. That's going to be down in here. I feel like the Confederates are in a tough spot now. In part, it's hard to get a grip on things. The terrain hurts, but the game system makes it tough too. When a defensive line's set up, you got a hard time moving it, which is fun. But the threat of units coming in down here means pursuing these guys without adhering to some kind of worry about the Union coming up behind me. Sounds like a terrible idea. Now, I doubt the Union's going to come up here if I set up a defensive line here. But if I'm in position, if I thrust forward and worry about attacking more than defending, I think there's a good chance I could suffer some bad attacks. So I'm a little afraid at this point of, you know, pushing on hard. And honestly, I can't push on too hard either. I could get, let's see, these guys, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. So I could get a 2-to-1 attack on this. What does that do me? Not much. Those are already attacking effective, and you know, continuing pushing them. Terrain is a valuable thing, but it's not worth exposing yourself for it. And I got to be careful not to lose my artillery because those are rare. So I don't know. Well, these rules allow you to block the entry hexes and nothing can come in through them. You can hold them all game if you want. So these units could be stuck not entering by a little bit of screening there. And that's the reason to attack this way, I guess, is to control these roads. Interesting. And we're going to just keep pushing forward, try to get around the flank there. Over here, we're doing kind of low odds attacks, possibility of destroying a unit if we get really, really lucky. But the main idea, again, is to just try to collapse the Union right. Over here, I'm shifting forces around so that I can launch an attack on this side over here. It's difficult for the Union to shift around on those wooded hills. So. And I didn't have a good attack available. Now, I could have gone running up this way, try to do something neat, but I think we've got our decision made while we're fighting. Cubs suffer a few setbacks. Pushed back over here, that means really no more combat in the center, where the rebels are the aggressor. Over here we did push forward, but back here we got shoved back. Someday these low odds attacks are going to catch up to you if you're playing with the attacking effectiveness rule. So, yeah. Anyway, I think that rule adds a lot to this scenario. And otherwise, you know, okay, granted, good play wouldn't have blundered and let this be open, or if it had, at least I'd have been aware of it, right? Of what I was losing there. I'm not sure. I wasn't trying to defend those hexes particularly. That's the thing. I was worried about this. But with that outcome, it means that a lot of the Union forces are just not going to come in unless the Union can break the Confederate line there. So I think this game is actually over because the Confederates managed to rush this. It's not this hex that matters. It's the entry hexes. And the game, you know, they give you the you know, you should rush for this. Well, no, that's not the important thing. And it's one of the dangers of like reading notes or not reading the rules as carefully as you might, not thinking about them as hard as you might. I might have noticed that and just not paid attention. It's the kind of thing that shocks the hell out of me when it happens, but it's kind of cool. And with a game like this, there's kind of a, it's not that big a deal, you know. Sure, it's a much longer game, but you know, it's not like something that is going to take a month for me to play, being damaged in terms of like the chance of anything happening. Now, how reasonable is it? Well, I don't know. I mean, picketing a couple of units here, this thing would form up and fight its way on. Simple game, though. Simple, unreasonable rules that, you know, allow you to do some very ahistorical or unbelievable things. The Union turn, not much they can do. They can't get their reinforcements in because these are blocked. And they're basically falling back. They basically lost the game as far as I can tell in a fairly simple manner. Confederates, on the other hand, pulling their reinforcements in. Not really able to get a grip, still here, slowly inching my way to get these units forward. I was hoping to get something here, but now these guys are all frozen well, unable to do anything basically. But I did make a little push here, and I'm forcing that Union line to have to fall back from this location. If those reinforcements can't ever come in, let's see, the turn 6 ones may be blown too, I bet. 728, 1027, that's down here again. You gotta protect these, apparently. You know, that's the kind of thing that, one, it's a unrealistic, unbelievable that these large Union forces would just be bottled up by a couple of pickets in the way. They'd find some way through, right? They'd find there's plenty of, yeah, it's nasty terrain. It might take them a while, but somewhere around here they'd start coming in, right? Certainly they wouldn't be destroyed. They'd find their way back elsewhere, but no, they're going to be destroyed and count as victory points at the end of the game. And in addition, the Union's not going to be able to use them, which they would also be able to do. At first I thought I had screwed the Confederates over, because usually reinforcements like that can come in somewhere else. So like in the Cemetery Hill one, if you block a road, an entry road, they come in, I think, a turn later on the next road over or something like that. That makes sense. Here, well, it may not be that quick, but they would find a way back around the mountain or whatever. They probably wouldn't be completely cut off. They might not be in the greatest shape, though. And it might be equivalent to whatever a loss represents in terms of broken unit or whatever. It's not a destroy. It's not like every man has been killed or anything like that. It's just the unit's no longer combat effective. So it might not be unreasonable to say the large Confederate force here is preventing that. But these, not enough. But maybe the fear of that big force that these represent is enough to convince them to make a long trek away and just miss the battle. Of course, if these are ever removed, they're not making that long trek, and boom, they come right in. However, the Union's not going to have the forces to be able to remove them. And like I said, this game's over. The Union's beginning to pull away, creating a vast sickle over here. We know we've lost the game. It's just a matter of keeping some part of our army undamaged here. And then falling back here, these guys are not going to be allowed to attack. We'll pull them back, no advantage to the woods, might as well be there. And we're going to be giving up this victory point hex, which is probably worth 5 points. Who knows? It really doesn't matter. You can see where things have fallen. It's launching an attack over here. I'm not going to be able to destroy things, but maybe they keep pushing them, keep trying to bend that line. This is not terrain you want to go over, though. We're really looking at, I don't know what at this point, I really don't. But making them counterattack and keep running away might be of some advantage. We're also doing some bombardment over here. We'll see what that works out as. And over here we're going to try a 1-to-1, because why not? If we can push forward there, we can just break this side of the Union line, and then they just have to go fleeing back. Worked out pretty successful, except bombarding units at low odds doesn't do shit. Those retreated, but here we forced a retreat. They're going to have to keep retreating. The biggie is we made it in here. They're going to have to make a 1-to-1, and they might end up falling back further, which kind of starts opening up a gap, and that's ugly, which means the Union, well, with the Confederates moving the way they are, the Union can afford to shift over to here, but I don't know, because the Confederates can't come running around here in the woods. It's just too restrictive a terrain. I actually managed a 2-to-1 here and rolled terribly. A 6, a 5 would have done it too. They're pushed back, and of course keeping them running here. No reason for the Confederates to advance. They'll do that on their turn if they need to. I really don't think I want to keep pressing here. 3-to-1 exchange here gets us this hex. Not a lot else going on. Confederates just pushing forward, but not really seeing any place where they can launch an attack. They've got to keep some kind of protection here. We wouldn't want the Union going off and doing anything crazy. Just keep them honest. I don't think they can do anything dangerous if they run back here. got such an advantage, but who knows? It's never a good idea to let somebody wander around on your flank. And then, well, we're going to be forcing the Union to fight here, and they're going to have a hard time getting anything else on there. So that looks like it'll probably be a 1-to-1 now. I could probably get it. I could get it up to a 2-to-1 if I'm willing to pull more units off the line, and I might as well. These guys aren't gonna be doing anything too impressive for a while, and it's coming close to the end of the day, which means at least all the troops will recover, but I don't see much hope. Continues to fall back, but in terms of the game, that's hopeless. What I should be doing is trying to free those units up in terms of the game, although I truly believe that the game has created in a historical situation. And with my blunder, no question. But I don't think a game should require absolute knowledge of everything in order for it to play out in a way that's believable. Like, if I made the blunder of allowing these Confederate troops to intervene, this is not a reasonable result for what this little picket could do. And if that picket leaves, the results aren't reasonable. So it's basically, and this is something I had with Paths of Glory as well, not knowing, the rules, which in this case were fairly simple, but in like Paths of Glory are embedded in the cards that you kind of don't want to look at before you play in order to spoil the thing. Not knowing those things shouldn't make it might be reasonable that makes you make blunders, and reasonably historically leaders made blunders of a nature that let troops get cut off or whatever, but the effects of those blunders should not be such that the whole situation becomes unbelievable and so ahistorical. I mean, not just ahistorical, not of this world anymore. Because of the nature of this system, it's very hard to get a grip on an enemy who has anything like a cohesive defensive line. And in this case, this isn't terribly good, but the Confederates are basically, at best, maybe pushing some units back. Now, this space they could conceivably kill, so that's important to attack first. But otherwise, I'm having a hard time finding anywhere I can get leverage and kind of grip on an attack. That's okay. It leads to a kind of frustration in my mind. I'm looking and I'm like, well, what the fuck can I do? I can't do anything impressive. I can't do anything terribly interesting. And again, I compare that to like the CWB or a firepower-based system where no matter what, I'm throwing units in. I might break the enemy. I might damage him. I might get a little lucky over time. Here, it's like I have to worry about all this kind of, everything's got to be positioned perfectly to get maybe a chance to kill a unit. Maybe. I just feel like I'm spending way too much mental effort of a type that doesn't really interest me. It's like a puzzle in each case. And yeah, I feel the same way about a lot of the smaller games, but you could make large games on this style too. I think that's what Europa kind of is. Certainly Anzio. Just they kind of frustrate me and I've been playing too much of the series. That's what it comes down to. We push into night. This was a remarkably effective turn for the Confederates. They killed, I think, 4 units. Just because the first unit here, they ended up being able to catch another unit in zones, and it got a retreat as well. And the Union line is beginning to dissolve. At some point, it will just be garbage. The dawn of a new day, the Union's going to have to make some attacks that were set up, before the night fell. You can't really do much after. You can maneuver around, and the Union kind of pulled back to give themselves a little bit more strength in the center to withstand. Again, not looking to win the game at this point, just looking not to lose it by more, even though there's no schedule to compare by in this particular scenario. Confederates sending some guys around the flank to degrade a Union position that they're abandoning anyway, but, you know, Confederates don't know that, and they don't have anything better to do with those units. In fact, they have a lot of reserve units. Now, this is important because it can... reserves actually matter if you're playing with the option, because forces that are attack ineffective now can hold the line, but they can't really attack, so, well, they can't at all, so, and they're not that great at holding the line either, it turns out, but you can funnel new, fresh troops in to engage, and keep an attack momentum going, even though you're not capable. And I guess I'm going to go play some Dungeon Degenerates. My wife is actually willing to play something right now. I had convinced myself, I don't really want to go to the game store and, like, play a two-player game because I kind of got to get this stuff done. But it turns out my life's a lot different since I moved here, and I'm happier overall, I guess, but I'm not getting as much of the solo gaming done, which some of you have noticed. I'm trying to play this out as long as possible, you know, to get maybe in a position where the Union will be at a range where they can run off the map and the Confederates can't. So I've got to hold ground and try to, you know, improve the advantage as much as possible on that. Again, it's hard to tell what the fucking, you know, terrain objectives here matter if the Union's going to give things up and go off to Chattanooga, and, you know, the Confederates are going to siege it no matter what, right? I mean, I guess there might be a situation in which the Confederates are beaten back or whatever, but pretty much it seems likely that that's what's going to happen with the Union. They're going to be falling back that way, and the question is, well, you know, how much time do they give? Time is not what's measured by these fuckers. These things are only really designed to try to create the battle that happened. Now, that might be not unreasonable, because the battle that happened may not have been until a certain point, but the Union, a lot of what's going on is actually after that point. The Union refused to give way over specific areas. Now, there's no reason to say this terrain's more defensible than this up here or something. So it's kind of, you know, if you use realistic historical type of goals that the commanders had, you might not get the historical outcome to any degree. And it's one of the weird things about, like, scripting versus what the goals are and everything. That's why I really feel a little funny about any tactical game. I love them, but they always strike me with this, yeah, but what about the scope just above this? Shouldn't we be worrying about that? And shouldn't we be having some goals there? And in something like SFB, that was easy to do. You could, you know, because there was no real terrain for most of the maps and nothing terribly fixed, and the hexes were bigger than, you know, any map size or anything like that. You had this kind of, well, the goal is really just to stop the enemy, and then you fall back or whatever if you need to, but at least you had the positioning on a broader map in context. It still didn't really work well. I haven't seen an implementation in any design that really gets that, dig in at the tactical level and give a nice operational view of the situation. So, I don't know. But some of the tactical games do a better job than this does in expressing the victory conditions, and some of them maybe no better at all. And this little attempt at a counterattack to try to divert things here, it got repulsed at both sides. It was a 1-to-1, which you can expect that. A 2-to-1, which maybe they had the edge on, but still not enough. Does it give the Confederates enough to play with? Well, pulling back here means it's going to be really hard to outflank these guys, at least at this location. As is so often the case in this series, and games like it, with all the things having similar strength points with the ability to build decent lines anchored on nice terrain, it's pretty damn hard to find a decent attack. This is actually one that could get destroyed. But other than that, There's nothing else. And otherwise, I'm just trying to, let's see if we can scoot around and outflank them on this side while we're, and stretch our line out and just try to advance on it. But it's really irritating because you like look at, you kind of know that you can't get a grasp on anything in the middle of the line and do anything, but you kind of look real hard at the edges and which units can you hit around the edges and everything. And it's just so much fucking work to do. Fucking work without much payoff, right? I'm not getting much in terms of story here. I'm not getting much in terms of believable historicity. What am I getting in terms of competition? Probably less than you would get out of a game of chess, and certainly less than I get out of a game of Go. So, where's the appeal? I don't know. Some of these games, some of these, the Blue and Gray series, some of the simpler war games, I don't mind too much. They feel kind of relaxing and just throwing pieces at each other. Generally, one side's got an advantage or some sort, I don't know, at least locally, but here it just feels like I'm trying to get a grip on something that's like a spiny eel or something. It's just horrible. And that annoying shit behind me, that's, there's a fucking pavilion back in the park, and they're so close and it's so noisy. It's quieted down a little bit, which is why I'm out here. It sounded as bad as the inside of a convention hall. But whatever you gain, whatever you're getting in terms of decision making and everything, none of it's strategic in nature. None of it's kind of there's just, other than like, oh, I knew about this and didn't, but and was able to cut those off because the Union didn't run down and defend the edge of the board, which almost makes no sense in this situation. In terms of, unless you know where the reinforcements are precisely coming in. But even with that, it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it makes sense to shepherd them in, but geez, give me a surprise attack coming on or something. Don't fucking ruin the entire game because somebody didn't cover a hex. But anyway, outside of something like that, there's very little in the way of real strategic decision making here. I mean, I guess early on you have the choice to go this way or go that way with the Confederates, and the Union has the choice to attack or whatever. But once you're in this position and trying to get a grip, it's so hard to move through this shit that you're really just kind of like, yeah, can I get an attack? No, it's only 1-to-1. A successful 1-to-1 attack down here kills another unit. We push these guys back. I'm going to force them to attack. It's at 2-to-1. It's not a bad attack number, but an attacker retreats. Hey, we invalidate a couple more units and maybe are able to actually get some action on here. I'm not saying that there's no thinking and no decision making to make in this game. It's just, it's not a pleasant type for me. It's all too much counting the odds and trying to get that little place where you can nibble and get a little advantage and maybe get a lucky shot at 1-to-1 or something. They didn't move at all. They just performed the attack they had to, and they were flung back. It was a 2-to-1 attack, which isn't terrible, but a little bit further down their way. I actually want to be here. I was allowed to retreat there instead. Give me a little bit better extension and prevent this road from just getting run down. That could be a real problem. First of all, Confederates could come wandering down here, but also there's all kind of victory point hexes that are easily reached from there. Continue to mainly rely on maneuver, and I think this system, especially with the attacker ineffectiveness rules, pretty much forces that. And trying to get an attack here, push them back a little further, get a little bit better grip over here, same kind of thing, and maybe cause a counterattack in the case of, it's kind of funny, the attack ineffective units, you can push them around. You can't really destroy them as easily because they run away instead of attacking, which is a little weird. There we got the Confederate position flung back over here. Hey, that's going to cause lots of problems. I'm not going to get an easy outflank. I've been shifting all my forces here thinking I would get to push them. It's the danger of hitting those guys. You don't get much out of it. Over here, though, I managed to retreat some units, and that puts the Union in an ugly position. They have to attack with units that aren't sufficient for it. I can't really shift down the fresh units to deal with it, so I got to hope for the best. It's forced to try to react to the Confederate outflank over here, and then over here their attack failed, so they're in
Yeah, I don't know if it's worse position. If they're getting shoved back, they're going to lose this hex probably. And the question is, getting these guys out is really not easy. Once you put them there, it's tough to move them out, and that's one of the reasons I'm stripping units from here. That's going to weaken this part of the line, so the Confederates can kind of push a little harder over there. And the rebels are going to take their big chance here. Attack on here. We're going to try to dissolve this whole side of the line, and we're pushing on here. This is pretty iffy. I think it's a 1-to-1. But if they get a retreat, they destroy this unit. This is like a 2-to-1, I think, which is a little bit more appealing. And even if we're flung back, maybe we'll get something out of it. In a stunning series of successes, everything went right for the Confederates here. Pushing right into the meat of the Union line. These guys are going to have to run away. These guys are going to have to attack that. These guys here. And there ain't much left. I've got these things that, you know, I don't know what the hell they can do. try to get back off the map and not lose too much. I mean, if the whole Confederate force leaves the map, that's worth a lot more points than those Union guys. But what are the proportions, you know? That's one of the other issues. Victory conditions aren't easy to assume. Now, in this game, it doesn't really matter. It seems to just be, hey, more or not more. But most of the games in this series have like a multiplier. You know, if you get 1.5 times the number of enemy victory points, you get a higher level of victory. Well, that becomes difficult to assess without doing a lot of counting and adding and all kind of crap like that. You be keeping track of your points on paper, which makes it easier rather than this. But you know, the question of whether it's better to leave the map for victory conditions or to try to hold some position and prevent the Confederates from getting off the map. Now, the Confederates will be getting a better total number of points off this, but this might increase the total proportion of losses, so, well, of points that the Union has, so it might be that actually works out better. I'm going to play it as if, because the victory conditions are just, you know, they don't specify any kind of which is a better victory or not, so they're agnostic on it, essentially. There's no way the Union can win this game. They should quit, you know. They should be offering a concession. They should have done it a long time ago. But at the very least, you know, I feel like trying to keep the delay going as long as possible is probably a good idea. It proved to be impossible, however, because both of these hexes are exit hexes, which means if I block one, the Confederates can kind of screen that one. I can run up, get the 20 point for this, plus the points for all the units I withdraw from the board. You know? I think the multipliers, are there any in this? Is it just 1 point per? I don't think so. It's 1 point per for kills, but the Confederates get 10 for every strength point they leave the map with. The Union only gets 1, so the Union does want to prevent the Confederates. Every unit the Confederates get off the map is just a huge difference, so we want to prevent them from being able to exit anything with a reasonable line of communications back. The Union didn't lose any more units, and you can see them fleeing back to try to reduce the degree of this loss. But with what's happening with these forces cut off, you know, somehow held off by a couple of brigades, hey, you know, they've got a long walk to go back. If the Confederates pretty much take the field here, you'd think, you know, without much problem, it's going to be pretty hard for Chattanooga to hold out any against this, especially with the army this smashed. They're in trouble. But the rebels going for the kill, trying to net these guys to prevent them from being able to do any kind of breakout and then get the clear route off there. I don't know. There's barely enough time, but and also trying to destroy things here, and I got a 3-to-1 there, so pretty much no Union units will be left at the end of this, I think. You got a lucky retreat on the Confederates here, but these guys are still dead because they've got to attack stuff that they're not allowed to attack. And then over here, I'm just trying to push them further and further along. And Union troops running to try to cover the gap up here, as well as positioning themselves over here. Lost a couple more units in that first fight down there. And I guess it's time for the rebels. Second to last turn. A couple of rebel attacks on the rear guard and a quick run heading for the victory spaces. Into the Union turn, it's obvious they're not going to be able to prevent 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, they are. This guy didn't have enough movement to get off the map anyway, but they weren't going to be able to prevent anything. But they've run through. I don't think we're going to see any withdrawals because of that. But you're going to see a rather massive victory overall by the Confederates, as predicted. You know, I mean, when a good portion of the forces aren't going to come to the battlefield, there's a problem. That remaining is really a 3-to-1 attack here, and what amounts to a 1-to-1. 9 points of artillery I can't figure out, and there's nowhere I can actually dump it. I could put it into either of these hexes. It doesn't help at all. Let's do the 3-to-1 first, because that might do something. That results in an exchange, which is not good for the Confederates, actually. And they don't really have great interest in that hex. And then the 1-to-1 can't do shit. As a defender retreat, push out. The Confederates would, of course, advance. We'll advance with one of the units that can't easily, because there's no possibility of loss. And this is really our end situation. You got Confederates just flinging themselves forward. I'm not going to bother counting the points. You know, you're thinking, well, geez, why did you bother with the last, like, half of the game? Yeah, that's a good question, but at least there's a story to be told here. I can guarantee you the Confederates are ahead of the Union. There's no rules for what kind of proportionality there is or whatever, so I don't know what the numbers are going to tell us. We can see what's happening. Chancellorsville's probably going to fall. Chattanooga's probably going to fall. Yeah, got my mind on another battle I don't play much. That's one I don't think I've played. Anyway, that's it for this one. Let's, you know, could have been interesting if this hadn't gotten locked out. Wasn't gonna do a mulligan on it. It would require too much effort. Basically, I thought the Confederates were screwed when I first saw that, because I'm like, whoa, the Union just keeps pumping troops in through there. That sucks. In terms of, hey, how much, you know, would the actual commanders know? Is this a possibility? You know, the result is a possibility. There have been times when forces were blocked off by much smaller forces. What generally didn't happen was that they'd just sit there and park. Although that's not entirely an unreasonable assumption, possibility either. It could happen. It would never happen again when I play this, because now I have this burned into my memory. And, you know, it's one of the facets to a lot of these games, really. There might be some little thing that you screw up that is just horrible. I find it more the case in these older ones, though, than I do in more modern designs. I mean, if you look at like an OCS or something, you could really fuck something major up, but it's unlikely that you're gonna have your units completely held off map for the rest of the game. That was sometime in the mid-70s. They kind of decided, you know, you should really be able to go around them or engage them in some way or whatever. And various different mechanisms were come up with to keep something like this from happening. Although, again, it isn't entire historically implausible that this happened. And I kind of kick it in with that, oh, there's cool stuff like that that just happens. But anyway, you can see what one little mistake can cost you in one of these types of games. Whoa, that is one big ass spider. I wish I could zoom on him. Ow. I think he wants to be outside. See if I can figure out a way to get him there.